Well, again, it's an honor, and I mean that, to have an opportunity to work in a class with you all. It's something that over the years I've found have been very important in places that I've been and things that I've seen other congregations. I've noticed that the amount of effort that's put into the classes sometimes will show the spiritual maturity of a group more than anything else. When they have a attitude of, well, it's time to have a class, I guess we should have one. What should we do? Well, let's do Acts again. And I'm not making that up. That is the way it is in certain places. There's not a lot of growth. When you think about what a Bible class does, there's always a difference of opinion, especially with these kind of Bible classes. This is not a class where I have all the information and you are sitting there and I'm giving it to you and later I will test you to see whether you know it. It's not that type of situation, but neither is it, and this is something I think we need to realize, especially older members need to realize, that when we study something this way, it's not necessarily where the teacher is simply a co-host or a moderator. Now it's your turn, now it's your turn. Whatever you happen to say is okay. Whatever you say is okay. Whatever you say is okay. And I'm just here pointing at people because there's a responsibility of what's said publicly. Realize that when you speak out, you're teaching the people around you. When you're asking questions and looking for truth, you're doing that. And when you make a comment that's kind of off the cuff, and when I make a comment that's off the cuff, where I haven't thought it through, it can have profound consequences. And you say, why are you saying all of that? Well, tonight is pride versus humility. And I'm not going to make any jokes about it, although I've got a bucket full there, I could. Here's a quote that I found that I liked a lot. Pride is universal, something we all deal with, as ancient as Adam and as relevant as the morning news. Yet we don't always see our own pride, which weaves like weeds around our lives. Oh, we see it in the obvious ways, but we can be blind to its deceptive, subversive ways in our hearts. We know the disease, but we don't recognize the symptoms. If all we have to do is say we should not be proud, we should be humble, and you all agree, well then we could go out and get in our cars, go down to Sonic and have a chocolate milkshake and make it back to pick up the kids at 6 o'clock. I heard an amen on that one, and so. But obviously there's more to it than that, isn't there? One can become a Christian and still continue having pride within. In fact, who doesn't have pride? I'm not asking you to raise your hand and say, I don't, okay? This is from a 2013 study in Frontiers in Psychology. It's German researchers, so take it as it will. But they did a research, and here's what they found. They found that 77% of survey participants regularly took selfies. And you know something? That was a lot smaller than I thought it was going to be. Okay? This is 2017. I wonder if it's more now. 82% of the survey recipients, or participants rather, would prefer to see normal photos and fewer selfies in their social media feeds. In other words, 77% are taking them, but 82% said, I'd rather see regular pictures. Only 40% of the participants rated their own selfies as inauthentic, and I'm making up a word here because I couldn't think of the right word, and I couldn't find it in the study, unprideful. I don't think that's a real word, but I like it. While 90% rated other people's selfies as prideful and superficial. So 40% of them said, yes, mine is superficial, but you know something? 90% of the others were. Why do people like taking, well, I don't know the answer to this question. Why do people like taking selfies but not seeing other selfies? I won't ask how many of you have almost fallen off the edge of the Grand Canyon while taking a selfie. But why do people think their own selfies are humble, but others are not? That's a good point. That's a good point. Yes, that's a good. No, it's not a rhetorical.
I mean, it's a judgment call. If I'm saying you are, you are not, or you're prideful taking your own selfie like that, and I'm humble knowing that I wouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and yeah, no, it wasn't a rhetorical question. That was a good question, though. When you get stuck on something, ask, was that rhetorical?
I mean, it just goes back to, you're able to see other people's faults. It's much harder to look at your own, to stop and really examine and call yourself out on it. It's much easier to point the finger and go, look at that conceited person.
That's what I would tell them, and that's why.
You maybe know the motivation why you're taking that picture, so in your own mind, you're like, well, I know my hearts and thoughts as far as why I'm taking this, and maybe you might be justified saying it's for a good reason, but it's easy to look at another person, but you can't read their mind or thoughts. You don't know why they're taking that picture.
They did another study that I don't have on this, and it was a study, I think it was in Detroit, and it was the judicial system. And what they found was there were certain judges that said when defendants came to them, especially if they were Muslim, they'd be wrapped. The women would be wrapped. And the judge made them take off their wrappings because he said, I can look at your face and I can see what you're really thinking. And they did a study of that. And what they found was he was wrong. When you think you know what someone is thinking, you don't. You can't. Isn't that what the Bible says? And yet we forget that all the time. And I know I do. I know exactly what they're thinking until I find out it's wrong. And then by that time, pain has been caused, isn't it? I thought all those were really good points. Would you give me some examples, please, in the Old or New Testaments of problems resulting from pride? If you just want to call out someone's name who was prideful. Did you say Larry? What?
King Saul.
Saul. I'm sorry. That's King Saul. Cain and Abel. Pharaoh. Samson. When you start thinking about it, which is harder, come up with names of people who are showing pride in the Old Testament, especially in the Old Testament, or people who are humble? What is the Bible doing? The Bible is showing us something, isn't it? It's not just a rule book. It's showing us how people live and how they end up falling away from God. And so we look at all of those. What about the New Testament? Some people who end up showing pride. Judas. Iscariot. There's a couple of them. Yeah, I know, but we always do. The first
Pride in persecuting Christians.
The Agrippa, the Saul. Oh, the first Saul. Saul 1 instead of Saul 2. Sounds like movies. I don't want to do that. Peter, yeah, I'll never deny. And Ananias and Sapphira, again, in the New Testament, are there more showing that than? I mean, what point is God trying to make in the Old Testament and the New Testament, telling His people about the problem of pride? I mean, it's almost on every page, isn't it? It's a problem that everyone has to do. The way I'm going to handle it right now is I would like to show you not the obvious pride, but it's some examples of pride and that kind of are hidden. You know, we can give those obvious examples, But there's some others too that maybe we can look at. If you turn with me, please, if you wish to, it's also up here, to Exodus, the 4th chapter, and verses 10 through 13. Exodus 4, 10 through 13. But Moses said to the Lord, "O my Lord, I'm not eloquent, either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I'm slow of speech and of tongue." Then the Lord said to him, "Who has made man's mouth? Who has made him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you shall speak." But he said, "O my Lord, please send someone else." I know we usually go through this and we look at it and we look at Moses as kind of, he doesn't want to and he tries to back out. Have we looked at it as an example of pride? Pride in the guise of false humility. Let me come back to that there. Moses at first refused to submit to God's plan. Isn't that right? You guys come up to me and ask me something, and I say, no, I don't really want to. And when I think about it, I'm kind of going, you don't really know everything I have going on and all that. Is that the situation with God and Moses? It's God. He knows it's God. And yet what does he have? What does he have the gumption, whatever you want to call it, to do? Yeah, except he's smart enough not to go, I'm not going to tell God no. I'm going to say, when you don't want to do something, what do? You make an excuse, don't you? You make an excuse. What excuse did he have?
Lack of confidence, but I think he didn't stop to think that he wasn't confident enough in God to guide him through what he had to go through.
And isn't that an example of pride? Because if you're not totally confident in God, who are you confident in? It has to be yourself. What do some people say the root of all sin is? Pride. We think of ourselves first. We go back to Genesis and we think of Eve and Adam. You guys didn't quite get that one. Some of you may have thought of it. Adam and Eve. What was their problem? Pride. I can figure this stuff out myself. I can handle these problems myself. And so, when we look at this then, does he suggest he thought that he may have known better than God or had found flaws in his plan when he asked these questions? Does he just do it once? For those of you that you know the story, he continues, doesn't he? False humility can be pride. A hidden pride. That's what I gave that quote for in the very beginning. Pride is not always an obvious thing that grows up and can be seen. It's not a weed growing in the garden that's huge. In fact, it can grow in a very subtle way. And I think that's what we see there. In Matthew, the 14th chapter. And Peter answered him, "Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink. He cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" What happened when Peter's attention and thoughts turned toward his own situation and safety? He started to sink, didn't he? Why? What did he notice?
He had to have noticed, whoa, I'm walking on the water. This is not even possible. Nobody can do this. Even though he asked Christ,
And
call me, I'll come. But, oh wait, now I'm here, I don't know.
And when he begins to sink, what is he thinking? I can't do this. I need to save. What does he do? He calls out. Why? He wants to save himself.
Well, initially, he didn't feel fear, but then when he noticed the wind and all that, then he felt fear.
When he felt fear, it meant that
He was no longer trusting that
he is no longer trusting. Fear is that thing that fear can be for a lot of reasons. And I'm not a doctor, and I'm not going to tell you that that those of you that have panic attacks, fear of that kind, that this is something that if you open up your Bible and read a certain verse, you're going to be fixed. That's not the case. There are physical things that happen. There are chemicals in your body, okay? Things that we're talking about there. But on the other hand, fear for a lot of us, isn't it? I want to make that decision. When I can't make that decision, that's when fear comes about. Fear is something I can throw up as a way of showing my discomfort. You're driving, and the person driving, you're riding in the car, and they almost have an accident, and you yell out. Have you ever done that? What are you yelling out? No, don't tell me what you're yelling out. But what's the purpose of yelling out? You're demonstrating your fear. Who are you demonstrating it to? Well, in this case, to the driver. If you were driving and that happened, would you have yelled? Maybe screamed, maybe not. You see what I'm getting at? This is the kind of thing that we're looking at. I'm not doing psychological stuff here. I'm simply saying that when we look at pride, and we just simply, pride is having an inflated vision of yourself. That's true. But pride can be hidden among many things. So much so that we can go through life. I know that I do false humility all the time. And I struggle with that because I have been raised that you do not promote yourself. That is not an honorable thing to do. And so if you hear me, when you say something nice to me, I will deflect it almost always. And it's not because I don't respect it, but simply because that's how I handle it. It's not a good way. It's not the best way. But see, imagine going through your whole life and not recognizing that. Go ahead, Judy.
All this one of the previous examples are also forms of, or essentially saying that we know better than God does.
Yeah.
He knew better than what Jesus did.
Yeah, that we know better, that we know better. Moses knew better than God. God, I need to interrupt you there. I kind of stutter. Plus, I killed that guy, and those guys don't really think much of me right now. And Peter, I was walking on water, Jesus, but now that I'm sinking, I'm just going to call out in fear, hoping. How much trust did he have in Jesus at that moment as he's sinking? A certain amount of skepticism, yes. I think so, and it's reflected by what words? Jesus saved me. I don't know. I don't want to work this into the ground, but I just wanted to kind of share that with you because I think it's something. Here's what I have. When we don't trust, it'd help if I actually read what I have on the screen. When we don't trust God, we might end up just thinking about ourselves, that's what we're talking about, and worrying too much. And worry is part of this. Are you a worrier? Are you someone that thinks about it every day and gets something into your head and worries? Ask yourself, are you trying to solve problems that you can't solve? Is it just as easy as that? No, because I've tried that and it's still a battle because I worry constantly. I will go home tonight and redo this class. Okay? We try to fix everything on our own. Name something we can't fix if you want to. It doesn't have to be personal. What is it we can't fix?
The injustices of the world.
The injustices of the world. Yeah.
Things that we do not have control over. Things that we do not
Things that we do not, name something that we don't have control of. That's it. Worry. Okay, now what's the difference between healthy worry and unhealthy worry?
Concerned and anxious.
There is a difference between healthy worry and unhealthy worry, because he got on the rich guy, the story about, because the rich guy was putting all his stuff. Well, my point is this. He asked us to be responsible for things. So what does the ant do? From the Old Testament, Proverbs. The ant does what it can do and provides for itself and sets aside things for the winter. It is the ant, isn't it? Whew. Thought for a minute I had a Disney cartoon mixed up on that. What about the grasshopper? I don't like grasshoppers, so what about them? They don't, and they die.
That's not old cartoon.
That's that's American Frontier. But my point is this. What is an unhealthy worry then? Things that you have no control over. What's he say about height, hair, those kind of things? What do you have control over? Going out and getting a job and saving some money and putting it aside and using it wisely and helping your neighbor and helping others and looking out after each other and serving God. That's what you're supposed to. Robert?
Some of the best advice I ever got was in wrestling, our coach took us aside one practice and he tells us, because all these guys are really anxious about who they're going to, what seed they are, who their match is going to be, you know, what the mat's going to be like, all these little worries. And he took us aside and he looks at us and he goes, you guys need to stop all of this worrying, because there are only two things in life you can control. Everything outside of that, you cannot control anything, because the two things in life you can control is your effort and your preparation and the effort that you have, that you put out in the moment. Those are the only, you can really only control yourself and your preparation. Everything outside of that, let it go, because you can't control it.
That's a very good point. I mean, it's one of those where I'm raising two daughters. This is when I was younger. I'm raising two daughters, okay? Rachel and I have a family. We're doing things. We're both busy. We're et cetera, okay? How easy is it to get caught up on this particular thing over here or that particular thing over there? And what does it do when I get caught up on that particular thing or this thing? It allows me to put all my emphasis on that, and all my pleasure goes there. I make those kind of decisions. I'm getting off the subject and my battery's running low. Was that me or was that you? Okay. Well, I am getting kind of tired. This week I'm going to actually do the second part of the subject too, rather than just stop halfway through. How about humility? Give me some examples of humility in the Old Testament. Job? Joseph? Abraham at times? It's getting kind of harder, isn't it? See? One of the Kayas? Abigail?
The woman who washed Jesus' feet with her hair.
In the New Testament, the one that washed Jesus' feet with her hair. That's a good one.
The small extent, Ahab.
Ahab. Ahab?
King Ahab.
King Ahab. Okay. I just went blank. You ever do that before where you just kind of go, yeah. Mary? Which one? Okay. At least at point Solomon there. With Mary, that's a good answer, because that answers half the questions of the Old and New Testament. And so we could do that. What about the New Testament? Oh, Carrie?
Moses is spoken of as the most humble person.
Good. Yeah, he's spoken of as the most, as we'll see in just a moment. That's a good point. How about the New Testament?
Tax
Tax collector.
and the tax collector. Yeah, where the Pharisee was saying, I think.
Oh, that tax collector, not the little, not, what's his name? Zacchaeus. He's a wee little man, you know. He was Scottish. So, someone said something, and I,
The widow, Dorcas.
oh, there we go.
I think we're gonna miss the big one, Jesus.
Oh,
Showed the most.
he's in there. If you turn to Luke, the 14th chapter, Luke, the 14th chapter, very quickly we're going to look at this little parable. Beginning in verse 7, now he told a parable to those who were invited when he noticed how they chose the places of honor, saying to them, when you're invited by someone to a wedding feast, do not sit down in a place of honor, lest someone more distinguished than you be invited by him. And he who invited you both will come and say to you, give your place to this person, and then you will begin with shame to take the lower place. But when you're invited, go and sit in the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. Then you'll be honored in the presence of all who sat at table with you. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Notice in that verse, and I know we don't have it up there, but even so, what happened was they come to the table, and he says, go to the least spot. Okay, it's not false humility. It's the idea that you don't know who all is going to be at that table, who's going to be there. So you're just assuming that you deserve the front spot. Instead, go to the least spot. So what is a practical application of being humble? When you're humble, in this case, what happens? You're not embarrassed. You're not embarrassed. You know, you start in the first seat and they're going, no, you need to move second, third, fourth, and by the end of the dinner, you're outside. And so that's the case as you keep moving down. That would be especially at that time, a very embarrassing thing to happen. I know it's a story that you go over almost every day, but if you turn to Numbers, the 11th chapter, I know you read Numbers 11 almost every day of the week and you're tired of hearing about it, but if I turn that thing off and on again, would it do anything? Probably not. I don't know. Yeah, remember what I said about teaching? Yeah, oh man, that's kind of, if we get it, we get it. If we don't, we don't. It's not that big a deal. Instead, turn to Numbers, the 11th chapter. We're going to start at verse 14. Numbers 11:14. This is Moses. I'm not able to carry all this people alone, he tells God. The burden is too heavy for me. If you'll treat me like this, kill me at once if I find favor in your sight, that I may not see my wretchedness. Then the Lord said to Moses, gather for me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be the elders of the people and officers over them, and bring them to the tent of meeting, and let them take their stand there with you. And I will come down and talk with you there. And I'll take some of the Spirit that is on you and put it on them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with you, so that you may not bear it yourself alone. He's frustrated, he's tired, he's exhausted. He says, I need help. And God says, select 70. Now let's pick it up at verse 24. Verse 24. So Moses went out and told the people the words of the Lord, and he gathered 70 men of the elders of the people and placed them around the tent. Then the Lord came down in the cloud and spoke to him and took some of the Spirit that was on him and put it on the 70 elders. And as soon as the Spirit rested on them, they prophesied, but they did not continue doing it. Wow, you're good. Thank you. Verse 26, now 2 men remained in the camp, one named Eldad and the other named Medad, and the Spirit rested on them. They were among those registered, but they had not gone out to the tent, and so they prophesied in the camp. And a young man ran and told Moses, Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp. And Joshua, the son of Nun, the assistant of Moses from his youth, said, my Lord Moses, stop them. But Moses said to him, are you jealous for my sake? Would that all the Lord's people were prophets, that the Lord would put his Spirit on them. And Moses and the elders of Israel returned to the camp. True humility. If you want to do a check of whether you're self-check of whether you're humble, do you share responsibility? Do you have to do everything yourself? Is it easier to do it yourself? Yes, sometimes, until you get like Moses and you're worn down and can't do anything. Think about that in jobs. Think about that in family. I'm not talking about doing things outside of what God wants us to do, of who's the head of the family, etc. But instead, I'm thinking of these are things that we share responsibility because it does show humility. You ever been asked by someone, they ask you your opinion? It gives you a good feeling, even when you can't necessarily help them that much. How about the person that never asks your opinion and knows it all? According to Holman's Bible Dictionary, the biblical definition of humility is the personal quality of being free from arrogance and pride, and, I underline this part, having an accurate estimate of one's worth. I'm trash, I'm nothing, I'm just dirt, I do no good. That's not true humility. That's putting down God's creation, isn't it? True humility is actually having a true understanding, an accurate estimate of one's worth. Do you have a connection with God? Do you have a relationship with Jesus? I know it sounds almost evangelical, but I can't think of any other way of saying it besides the way we usually do, which is, have you been baptized? That's the last stage, by the way, and not the only stage. But think about that for a second. Then, what's your worth? God made everything. I mentioned this one time in a study of Genesis. God made everything in the universe, and yet the most important thing he made was man. And we spend all our time looking at the universe and how wonderful and big it is, and it tells us that God's there, but it doesn't tell us anything else. I didn't mean to preach. Sorry about that. Humility allows me to recognize my limitations and trust in God's provision. Here's my shortcomings. I can be hot-tempered. I can be a know-it-all. Okay? I can be... I'm not really ready to get old. I am, but I'm not ready to. I want to study linguistics. I want to learn Gaelic, but I can't. physically anymore. I'm going to have to learn that there's certain things I can't do. Those of you that are really good athletes, you learn there are certain things you can't do anymore. Right? We all get to that stage, but guess what? We're all going to get to that stage, aren't we? Humility allows me to recognize my limits and treat others as equals and superiors in any situation. When's the last time you should have treated someone as equal and you didn't? If you're like me, you can count and you know exactly when it was, and it probably wasn't all that long ago. To me, this is something I have to work on every day. This is not one where I can teach and go, I know this stuff, and I can tell you, and you don't have to, and I've got it down. I don't.
Like the two verses in Proverbs that speak of pride and humility together, and that humility, when it's better, it is to be of humble spirit with the lowly than to divide the spoil with the proud.
Yeah, it's to be with the humble, with the lowly, than to share the spoils with the proud. The thing about the proud is that they don't recognize they're proud.
Do you think what separates like humility and pride is like your motivation? Is that like a distinguishing factor?
I don't know. To me, it's the ability, from what I've seen, it's the ability of person, and this is just my, you guys have better than I on this, I'm sure. The ability of a person to actually try to look at themselves honestly and recognize that they can't entirely. You're going to skew it on the good side. Most people are going to skew it on, they're either going to twist it on the good side or the really bad side. Most people are really not accurate. In fact, I don't know anyone really except Jesus that had an accurate idea of what he was like. And so in that way, but what scares me is in the body of Christ when people get to this stage where they kind of go, hey, I haven't really been rude to anyone, and so I don't have that problem with pride. And you ask them, well, have you thought about it? And they just stare at you. Go ahead, Mitch.
One thing that can be kind of insidious, right, about pride is just not feeling comfortable having people help you. You want to help other people. And Jesus said it's better to give than to receive. And so we sort of take that to heart and say, well, I need to be a person that gives, and I don't have time to receive. But one of the things you need to think about is when you don't allow somebody to help you, you're denying them that blessing.
That's a good point.
For somebody to give, there has to be somebody to receive. And if you don't do that with people in your lives, you deny them that opportunity, and that's pride.
That's a particular problem among leadership, elders and preachers that I found. And that is they're giving with all their heart and soul. But if something happens, they shut you out. Their life is their life, and they don't want people to know. It's my personal stuff. I will take care of it. I want to know everything about you, but you can't know anything about me. And it comes down to pride. I mean, it comes across for some people as, look how humble they really want to help. No, again, that's motivation, I guess. You get the last word, Robert, and then we'll go down and get a milkshake.
Well, the one thing I think that kind of my mind is going back to here is we do need to make sure that with what scale we are measuring
Yes.
our work. And I think the Bible is very clear. The scale that we should be using is not the scale of man, not the scale of what we think is right, but the scale of the Word, and that we evaluate, as we see in James chapter 1, we look at ourselves in the mirror, and we want to have that accurate evaluation, but not of our own standard, of the standard of the Lord, and being able to recognize whether we're meeting the standard that God calls us to, or if we're failing in certain points. And that I think is always important when we talk about self-evaluation, that we remind ourselves that we need to be evaluating ourselves according to this
According to the word.
and not anything else.
That's a very good point, and I want to congratulate you. I thought I heard a bell, and no one got up and started running out. This is not an 8th grade class. Good job. Thank you so much. Next week, we have preaching. In 2 weeks then, oh yeah. Well, I didn't get through all of it after all. Anyway, close enough. Self-made versus God-made. We'll talk about Andrew Carnegie. Thank you so much.